cheating wife promised it was the last time, so I made sure it really was by abandoning her and ruining her dream job offer. I know that I'm going to get called a lot of names with the post I'm making right now, but the truth is, I was a very different person several years ago, and it is why I allowed a lot of things to slide. I'm not the kind of person who does that anymore, so please keep that in mind before you start reading. Either way, I know I'm probably going to get called a wuss, a coward, a cuck, and every other name in the book, so I'm ready for that. I, 38 male, have been married for 15 years. Looking back, I got married relatively early, and I probably wouldn't advise anyone else to get married before the age of 25, to be honest. There's so much that you don't know about life when you're that young. My wife, 38 female, worked at the college that I went to, and we met very soon before I graduated. I was going to head back to my hometown after the degree, but I spent some extra time so I could hang around with her, and we became really close, and eventually started dating. In my life, I've only had 2 major relationships, and she was the second, so I wasn't jacked yet. I went into it with heart wide open, and it hurt when I eventually had to move back to my hometown anyway. Regardless, we kept things as a long-distance relationship, and it was fine like that. At least, I felt it was fine. But one day, about 2 months after I moved back, she called me crying and said that she had made out with some guy. According to her, she went to a party with some friends. She had too much to drink, and she kind of just let things happen. She admitted she knew it was wrong, but she wanted it too much in the moment to not do it. She apologized over and over, and I was broken by it. I had to take a break from speaking to her so that I could really think about the situation. And after doing that, I guess I loved her too much to let her go, so I forgave her, and we continued with the relationship. Eventually, partly spurred by the fact that I feared that doing things over distance was going to be the end of us, I moved back to that town and we started living together. Things got better really quickly. It was just nice having her around again, though it was hard to get the idea of another person making out with her out of my head. Well, another 2 or 3 months after the last cheating episode, we had a fight. She left the house, and she came back in the dead of night. It was about a week after that she sat me down and admitted that she had slept with someone that night. According to her, she was so angry and she wanted to hurt me, and she realized how bad that was. She apologized over and over, but being there in person made it worse. I told her that I was breaking up with her, and I slept in the park that night. The next day, when I went to get my things, she cried and said that she would never ever do it again. She said that it was the last time and that she valued us too much to ever mess up again. She had supposedly learned her lesson, and foolishly, I let the soft part of my heart win. I was romantic, I suppose. I forgave her, though I took a trip back to my hometown for a month and came back after I had fully cooled down. I know that I let her cheat on me twice and I forgave her both times, but I was young. I was young and very naive. We didn't have all the male education platforms that currently exist, so I only had my emotions to guide me, and I went with what felt the best in that moment. Now, I know that recap was long, but I promise that there's a lot of relevance to it, because she's been acting weird and that instantly made my mind jump to her infidelity. That was all before we were married, so it has been an incredibly long time, but the anxiety that comes from having been cheated on never truly left me. It was my first fear. Needless to say, I had to confirm it. I was fueled by the need to confirm it. So at the first chance that I got, I grabbed her laptop and I made sure to check her messages on her phone and on her social media accounts. And that's when I saw that there was a guy she had been chatting with on Facebook Messenger. His name was Henry. Having been married for so long, I was supposed to be in the phase where I knew all of my wife's friends and all the people that she talked to on a regular basis. But Henry wasn't one of the names I knew, and the fact that he was right at the top of the last message had been sent the night before. I already knew that something was up. I went through as much of the conversation as I could, and it was pretty easy to confirm that they have been sleeping together. I won't say I'm devastated by it, because I've always been waiting for it like a time bomb. My anxiety is always by my side, so this just feels like validation of that. And there's a weird relief in knowing that I truly did F up by not ending it with her all those many years ago. There's nothing that I can do about it now, though. I just have to deal with the fact that I have a cheating wife and figure out what my next move is going to be. Because, as it is, I know that there's no way I'm going to forgive her. I've done it twice, and the last time, she promised me it was going to be the last time. It clearly wasn't. And the worst part is, with this coming 15 years later, I'm almost sure she must have cheated sometimes in between, but I just wasn't lucky enough to find out about it. And that hurts. I know I can't trust her ever again. It's over. I'm going to confront her, so that's not the problem. I just need a place to vent before I do. I don't want to end up raging and losing my mind, letting all those bottled up emotions out in front of her. So instead, I'm going to let my head cool down a little bit so I can approach her with complete level-headedness. Update 1. This might not be the update that a lot of you want, and I know you'll think I'm going back to my cuck ways, but I promise that's not the case. If you remember my previous post, I was convinced that I was going to tell my wife that it was over just a few days later. I haven't done that yet, though, and there's a good reason for that. I didn't mention it in the previous post because it wasn't relevant. I've worked in tech for a very long time, and eventually I was able to get the luxury of working remotely. She's been a fashion journalist for half of our marriage. She's always been a fan of a certain fashion publication in Asia, and literally a day after my post, she told me they had opened a vacancy for a writer. She felt like she had more than enough experience, but the only thing was that she'd need to relocate, and we're talking about an entirely new country, not just moving to another state. I initially told her that I'd never do that because I knew that things were going to end soon, and I wasn't trying to put a smile on her face. My many years of reading posts here has had an effect on me. I realized that I could actually hurt her a lot more by encouraging her and hitting her where it hurt the most. To be honest, I was going to hype her up for the job, and then if she hopefully didn't get it, I'd hit her with the divorce papers at that very moment. But you know what? I think the way things worked out is going to be even better, to cause her pain. She actually got the job. It's crazy because I would have been thrilled for her on a normal day. I would have danced around and taken her out for a fancy dinner, but I couldn't have that much happiness because she ruined everything. Either way, I made sure to celebrate with her, and that's when she asked whether I really wouldn't budge on the relocation thing. I pretended to think about it for a day, and then I told her I actually would. Obviously, she was happy when I said that. I mentioned how I'm going to make plans to sell the house that we had and other major assets, and that I'd figure out accommodations for us in Hong Kong. She left it all to me, quite stupidly, and hasn't even checked in with me on the progress. Needless to say, I'm sure you can all see where this is going. She's meant to resume in 10 days. I've supposedly bought the tickets and arranged an apartment, but I haven't done any of that. I'm going to serve her with the divorce papers, and then I'm going to skip town. I feel evil, but hey, what can I say? I didn't bring this on her. Frankly, you should have been done with her when you first found out. You can still be a romantic and know what's good for you, and what's not good for you. Update 2. Many of you were convinced that I was stuck in my old ways and that I'd ultimately forgive her for what she did to me, but the truth is, I knew I wouldn't. There's only so many times that a person can be disrespected, and I had it from her enough times to never want to deal with it ever again. So, I've made my move, and there's a lot to talk about. The day before we were supposed to travel, we had our bags packed and everything was ready for us to take off to the airport the next morning. The only thing was that she had no idea that I wasn't planning to take the trip with her, especially since there wasn't even a trip booked in the first place. In the middle of the night, I got up, took my luggage, got in my car, and headed off to a hotel. I was the one who had the supposed tickets for the trip. I was also the one who had the details for the apartment that we were supposed to be staying in. She didn't have any of that. The next morning, she called me about 5 times before I woke up. I had my phone on Do Not Disturb. When I did, I was tempted to call her back, but there was still a lot of time for her to make things work. When I didn't pick up any of those calls, she started to switch to messages. She was clearly panicking, asking where I was and what was going on. Part of her even wondered if I had somehow forgotten her at home, which was funny. Then she started asking if she did something wrong, or if I was angry, and I felt like she might have had an inkling that I knew about her infidelity. I still didn't say anything. I just kept leaving her unread. Eventually, when it was about 3 hours to the departure time that I had told her, she said she was going to have to go to the airport anyway because she didn't have a choice. She still hoped that she was going to meet me there and that I'd explain whatever was going on. But when she got there, she realized I wasn't there. Then she started asking for me to send the ticket at the very least. It was a mixture of phone calls and frantic messages at that point. It was clear she was trying to salvage the mess and confusion that she had found herself in. I guess she felt like if she could just get to Hong Kong at the very least, she'd be able to make things work. That was when I told her that I was on my way and that I'd explain everything when I got there. After that, I turned off my phone. About 2 hours later, I turned it on, and to say that she was pissed would be an understatement. She said she was heading back home and that she was going to book a flight for herself the next day since she had no idea what was going on with me. She was planning to use a credit card that belonged to me to book that flight, and that was also something that I wasn't going to let happen, so I froze it. That part was fun because she texted me to complain that the card wasn't working. At that point, she wasn't even asking what she had done or what was up with me. I think she might have been able to put the pieces together, but if I could make her feel only half of the anxiety I had felt in all those years, I'd be glad. At that point, I decided to head back to the house and confront her. I just wanted to give her the worst few days that she could ever have. She started screaming at me the moment she saw me, and I just walked past her and sat on the couch. She kept asking what happened, and it was then that I finally told her that I knew she had been cheating on me. Initially, she tried to deny it, but I told her I knew about Henry, and her face turned white. She started crying almost immediately. She sank to the floor and just started sobbing. I guess she realized how everything was falling apart at that moment. I asked her if she had anything to say for herself, but she just kept crying. Eventually, she was able to say that it was a mistake, that it happened just once, which I knew was a lie, and that she was sorry. She was begging me to forgive her. She said it wasn't too late for us to pack up and go to Hong Kong. She said that changing places could make everything better again. The concept of traveling to another country with the love of my life would normally have felt like a dream, but in this case, it didn't. I told her that I'd never do that, and that she could go to Hong Kong alone, but I told her right there that the apartment wasn't booked and that I had never actually booked the tickets in the first place. She started crying even more. I told her that she could still make it, but it wouldn't be with a dime of my money. Looking back on it, I feel pretty bad, but I feel I gave her enough chances over the years we had known each other, and this was just my one chance to hit back at her. She said she couldn't afford Hong Kong on her own, and that she wanted to go with me. I told her that she could afford it, she just had to live within her means. It wouldn't be the fancy apartment that I had shown her photos of. She wouldn't be able to spend as much as she had always been able to with my card in her possession. Life would change drastically, and probably not for the better. She never went, unsurprisingly, and the day after, I left the house again and went to chill with a friend. I've been out ever since, and that's pretty much the end of us. I'm going to sort out a divorce lawyer so that we can end things officially. I know I might get hit pretty hard in the divorce, but the salary disparity is so large that it'd be hard for me to avoid. Update 3. So this is going to be the final update, but things were finally finished between me and my ex-wife. She never went to Hong Kong in the end. It would have taken her too long to figure out alternative arrangements and the funding for those, so she ultimately just let it go. And it's funny because she had already resigned from her previous job. Not a smart move on my behalf because it positioned her more favorably in the divorce, but whatever. I went back to the house for a day to serve her with papers, and I also told her it'd be best for us to just sell the house and split the proceeds. She said I should go and F myself, so I left after that. The divorce process wasn't horrible. I had evidence of her cheating, and she had evidence of me basically stringing her along and making her lose her job. So we both looked like pretty crappy people. I don't mind that. I agreed to pay alimony for a limited amount of time and chose to keep the house, so we settled on her receiving 30% of its value. So she left with quite a bit in her pockets, to be honest. But I'm simply glad to have her out of my life. I don't care whether she's rich now or not. I'm simply at peace, and that's enough for me. She lost the safety net she took for granted, the life she thought she could keep manipulating, and when it all came crashing down, she was left standing there with nothing but her own choices staring back at her. Is it better to walk away with dignity or make sure they feel the weight of what they did first? Either way, share your stories with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on our space. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time.